Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America, online, thisweekinamerica.us. The book From Beatons to Beach Haven is the remarkable story of Ghost, a 28-foot wooden catboat, the winner of 7 consecutive Bay Championships featuring extraordinary craftsmanship. It's the gripping story of Ghost's initial disaster on the racecourse, a remarkable recovery, and then 22 years of continuous competition. The author is William Fortenbaugh, Professor Emeritus of Classics at Rutgers University, and an avid sailor, actually beginning at age of 8. He raced many types of boats. The book is a collaborative effort, the builders at Beaton's, the crew of Ghost, photographers and friends, all making contributions. From Beaton's to Beach Haven, author William Fortenbaugh, our guest on This Week in America. Bill, welcome to the program. It's great to have you with us today.
Well, it's good to be with you.
And what a love story reading this book, From Beaton's to Beach Haven. Let's talk specifically a little bit of history before we get started here. This is a class of boat that we're talking about, as I understand, that's unique to, is it Bornegat Bay in New Jersey?
Yes, Bornegat with an A, Bornegat Bay. It is unique to Bornegat Bay. Comes from 1920s. In the 1920s, catboats were very common. They were typically wide and carried a gaff rig, not a single mast, but a mast that had a gaff sticking off it. And in 1922, Charles Maurer, who is was a very good naval architect, got his hands on this catboat class in New Jersey, designed a boat of 28 feet long, and it proved an instant winner. And that transformed catboat racing on Bornegat Bay. He put a single mast, not a gaff mast, so-called Marconi rig in the boat, and in 1922 won everything. And that, of course, discouraged the competition.
Yes.
And the next year, there was hardly anybody out sailing against him. In fact, the season had 2 new boats built to this new concept of a Marconi rig, but the old boats failed to come out. So the local racing association created 2 catboat classes. One called the A-Cat class, which would be made up of 28-foot boats with Marconi rig, and then one for everybody else. It would be sort of like a dog show with mutts running around.
Yes.
They all were different, but they raced against each other. So that's the story about the early history back then.
And it went through, it survived the Depression, but it was greatly affected by the Depression. And talk about that and the renaissance of the type during that period.
Well, when the Great Depression hit, money dried up.
Yes.
And boats aren't inexpensive. And the money was coming from mostly Philadelphia families who would come over in the summer to summer on the Jersey Shore and race on Bornegat Bay, which is right along the Jersey Shore. In places, it's only 3 streets wide, the shoreline there. And so with the Depression, the class just stopped sailing, and the boats were kept out of water and deteriorated slowly. And at some point after the Depression, the boats got back racing again, but they were in terrible shape. And one man came out of the woodwork and said he wanted to save the class. And he bought up all the bloody boats. And he would sell them to locals who were willing to race them once they fixed them up. And so the class was saved, and they were still, and David Beoton and Sons built a new one and repaired the old ones. And building the new one is really what transformed the class, because it very quickly became clear that new boats were better and faster, if only because they were tighter, they didn't leak, and they were lighter. So in when did I get my boat? My God, I'm having a senior moment. Well, it doesn't matter. 1994, I guess. 1994, sure. In 1994, Ghost was launched. It was built between 1992 and 1994, and I realized how impressive this boat would be being built, not just on the water, but it's big, 12 feet wide, 28 feet long, and all beautiful new wood inside. And this really was serendipity. I don't know why I did it, but I asked a local photographer, R.T. Speck, a very good photographer and a personal friend, to photograph every stage along the way. And he did. And the results of that photography turned into the first chapters of the book that has been written.
Yeah, you feel like you're attached to the project as you're watching it unfold. You've got the narrative. It starts with the history that Bill just went through, and then you go to the pictures and you go through actually the building process step by step. Construction at David Beoton and Sons in Brick, New Jersey. It's interesting. It was done in the main workshop, which I guess was with the main shed, and the problems you had in doing that. There were problems in the winter because there really wasn't a modern heating system in the shop, was there?
That is correct. In fact, my favorite photograph in the whole book, there are lots of photographs, some of ghosts that I love dearly, but my favorite picture is the first picture inside the so-called workshop or wood shop. The first picture, it is a picture of an old-fashioned stove, wood stove, as well as a potbelly stove, two stoves in a corner of the building. And the old-fashioned stove, square stove, was for heat, and the potbelly one was for steam. And when you get a boat like Ghost, you're going to be bending planks. And this potbelly stove, going back into the 30s, I suppose, was used for bending the planks. You had to heat them up, get them wet, and then you brought them out and quickly put them on the framing that you've got ready. So, as I said, it's terribly romantic. I'm sorry, I'm almost sad to be thinking about it.
Yeah, that was a special era, and you captured that in the picture. And you also show another great picture is the beneficiary of all the heat in there. The sudden heat is Bozo the cat that was there in the premises and was taking advantage of the heat during the winter period there. The book we're talking about is From Beatons to Beach Haven. It's by William W. Fortenbaugh. That's Fortenbaugh. The book's available wherever books are sold. You can go to bookventure.com at the bookstore there. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Great pictures. You feel attached to the boat because you actually see the boat in its infancy from when the boat is actually built, decides he wants to go ahead and build this. We go up to the launching of June 12th, 1994. That was a special date, I'm sure, in your history. What was that like to see this dream of yours actually ready to be launched?
Well, it was needless to say an exciting experience,
yes.
And we prepared for it with great preparations. And when they rolled the boat out of the main shed where it had been built, I was aflutter. I hate to say that. I mean, I'm an old man, and I would pride myself in not being a flutter very often, but I really was at that point to see this boat rolling out. And it's a dark green hull, which is not only beautiful on the land, but on Bornegat Bay, which has a brownish water, cedar water, it looks just splendid. Other people try and put a white boat there, and even more ridiculous, a baby blue boat, and it doesn't look right. But ding busted, this is absolutely the right color. And the reason it was painted dark green, I call it, I've forgotten what I call it. Hunter's green. I call it Hunter's green. It doesn't matter. But this is the traditional color of boats on Bornegat Bay. My duck boat, which I got at the age of 8, was green like this, and my sneak box, a 15-foot gaff rigger, was colored. This was also dark green. And if you went down to Little Egg Harbor in those days, you'd all find dark green boats built down there and sailed down there.
It is a stunning picture that you see in the book. The photographer did an excellent job. And part of the celebration was, I understand, Ghost favorite beer Rheingold was available that day as well as part of the celebration. Even had a favorite beer.
Oh well, Rheingold was the favorite beer in New Jersey in 1994, and earlier than that. I mean, I grew up on Rheingold. I was well above being a juvenile, but I grew up on Rheingold. And of course it had this wonderful jingle, "My beer is Rheingold, the dry beer." Think of Rheingold whenever you try beer, however it went. And we made it our fight song. And it was sung at the launching and at the award ceremonies for the next 7 years when we picked up our wins. We sang it. If anybody gets to Bayhead and wants to go into my basin and see my collection of Rheingold memorabilia, it's just wonderful. This is, of course, Rheingold's out of business today. It's all very sad, all the new fancy beers. But we're dated, and we still remember Rheingold.
Well, it sounds like another book that you've got that you could develop just in talking about the popularity of Rheingold and what it meant to you. I mentioned the launch date.
Can I just add one thing
here?
Sure,
sure, please do.
People who are interested in photos and things of how we illustrated this, there are any number of serious photographs of Ghost coming out of the shed and getting on the hoist and all of that. But my wife christened Ghost, and that requires a bottle, and you strike it against the bow. And the bottle was a large bottle of Rheingold beer. And we have a picture in the book of her striking the bow of the boat and the beer flying out, and one of the builders is standing there laughing. I mean, it's just a wonderful picture.
You will find all of that, pictures like that. You become very attached to Ghost and the era and the camaraderie during the reading of the book From Beatons to Beach Haven by William W. Fortenbaugh, our guest on the program. Information at bookventure.com in the bookstore. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Time going by so quickly, and we'll have Bill back and talk more about this, but I mentioned you went from disaster initially to recovery and then 7-time champion. Talk about that, the disaster part of that, because that happened very quickly.
Oh, well, this was the very first race for the Bay Championship and almost our very first sail in the boat. The boat was not ready to race, but we decided to have a go at it anyway. And in light air, we could have sailed. But the wind kept coming up, and finally it was one of these southeast blows on Bornegat Bay when the wind's up at 20 miles an hour, and we couldn't control the boat. And I can still remember suddenly being jerked by the tiller and losing control, sliding under the tiller into the leeward bilge. And fortunately, my mainsheet man, who was much bigger than I am, grabbed the tiller, and he tried to sail the boat, and it became hopeless. And eventually, we blew over. We've tipped over. I'll keep it simple. We tipped over, and that's wonderfully illustrated in the book. And we had to be towed back home. I won't say it was humiliating. I was determined to recover. But our competition tried to turn it into a little bit of humiliation. And we fooled them the next week because the boat was ready to sail, and we had the best crew out there, and by no doubt the best crew, and we killed them. And we won the next 7 races.
Which is amazing when you think what happened. And again, that could have totally deflated everybody, and instead it was motivation, and you come back, and these others that are laughing, thinking, okay, we put Ghost in its place. You reel off a string of wins, and suddenly you're the one laughing, and they're not.
That's right. That's right. And I don't want to rub it in any way.
Oh, come on, do.
But Ed Viankowski, who was my main sheet man and the man who tried to save us the first race but couldn't do it any better than I could, he actually wrote a report about that first race, which was published in another book called A-Cats. And he wrote, based on the reaction from others to that first day performance by Ghost, it became apparent that Ghost was not being considered all that seriously by a contender. Any such thinking was misguided. And fortunately, nobody told me that we'd been discounted, but apparently Ed, who lives in another town, got an earful. And, of course, we were really ready to go the next day. And we got on the starting line, and we decided to start below the whole fleet. And I realized that they were all bunched up at the weather end, pushing at each other, and we just trimmed in the sails, free air, and by the time we got to the first mark, we had the race won. It was a wonderful feeling.
And a totally amazing story, and the success of, 7 times Bay champion. And a couple minutes left in the program. We'll have Bill back to talk further about this great story. There are so many elements that are endearing as you're reading about this. And I want to talk about, just briefly before we go here, what this experience was like for you. I mentioned this was a collaborative effort. You had the builders at Beaton's, the crew that's featured, of course, in the book, the photographers, the friends, all making some type of contribution to this. What type of feeling did you have as you went back, relived these great moments in pictures, and then put them together in the book?
Well, the first thing to be said is that I had no idea how little I knew about a wooden boat. And of course, I grew up when all boats were wooden.
Yes.
I had sailed duck boats and sneak boxes. They all had wooden framing, wooden decks, and so on. But when I sat down to write this book I realized that I was totally dependent on the workers at Beaton's. And several of them contributed mightily. I think I wrote in the introduction that the English is mine, but the building is reported by them. And so it was just a wonderful experience educationally for me, and to be able to describe what is going on in the pictures, all because of their help. Well, I came away almost humbled. I hate to say that because I'm not a humble person, but I came away almost humbled.
Well, and you were so instrumental, obviously,
so
in
that's
this
one
whole
of the
process.
real things. Doing this book is just an amazing thing.
It's a fascinating
And then, of course, there were all the people who crewed on Ghost and who contributed to the book. And I just want to mention one person whose name is John Dixon. He came to the boat with me from sailing E-Scows, very fast, high-powered boats. The reason we gave up E-Scow sailing, in part at least, was we were tipping over too much. We never practiced, so we thought we should change over. And right at the beginning, I asked John, told John that I didn't know what we were going to call this bloody boat. And he said, well, there are one-syllable A-Cats out there that have threatening names. Spy, for example, was one of them. And Wasp was another. And John said immediately, I said, well, what should we do? He said, Ghost. And I said, perfect. So we called the boat Ghost. And at the rear of the book, John sailed with us until he could no longer sail any longer. He had a bad cancer. But in the rear of the book, it ends with a picture of a dedication, if you will, an appreciation of John Dixon, with a picture of Ghost being towed back against an evening sky with the sun about to go down, light on the water. And it's a very, very moving appreciation for me. And people who've read the book are just struck by it. And that's the end of the book. So it went from a good joke on a threatening name to an appreciation for somebody who stuck through racing with me for probably, 25, 30 years.
Wow. I mean, what a friendship and a relationship, and it just
You guys
so many
still
of the
there?
stories. Yes, we're still here.
Oh,
Just
no.
so many of the stories that you'll read in the book, from Beatons to Beach Haven by William W. Fortenbaugh. The book you'll find at bookventure.com at the bookstore. You'll find it at Amazon. You can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. So many more elements of this that I find fascinating. We'll have Bill back on another program and talk about this. Bill, it's a pleasure reliving. It was fun looking at the pictures. We still have many more stories to talk about. We will have you back on the program, and thank you for being with us today. You're listening to This Week in America online, thisweekinamerica.us, and we're back after these messages.